It's really a thrill to be with you all. I'm going to talk, as Esther said, for about 15 minutes. I was asked to say a word about the constitutional and democracy crisis we face, which I'm sure you're very well familiar with. So I'm going to try to be brief on that part. Then I'll talk about the work that we at Public Citizen are doing in the litigation space, and talk also about some of our work around mobilizations, and then be really thrilled to start the conversation off about whatever's on your mind. Before I jump in, just let me say how cool I think this enterprise is, and how appreciative we are, and as I know our colleague organizations are, for your interest and for your support monetarily of our organizations, but also for your engagement and the democracy. As you'll see from my presentation, that's the key theme. The litigation is really important. We believe deeply in the work we're doing. But even more important than litigation is that people around society refuse to be isolated, intimidated, and withdraw, and instead lean in, connect, hold hands, and engage. So we're just super thrilled that you do this in this space and for all that you do. Okay, let's jump in on the authoritarian moment. It is exactly as bad as you think. Here are a few indicators just to share before I jump into what our work is. I would say that this administration is orders of magnitude worse by almost every measure than the first version of Trump. That this administration, for me, exceeds my worst fears of what it might plausibly be. So we're eyes wide open about what we're facing. What are the indicators that support this claim? Well, let's just start with corruption as one example. In the first administration, Trump had a hotel in Washington, D.C., and foreign governments bought hotel rooms for hundreds of dollars, or even occasionally paid tens of thousands of dollars to hold conferences in his hotel. This term, he's got a cryptocurrency, which is enabling foreign governments to funnel money directly to him for doing nothing and providing no service whatsoever. And reports are that he and his family have made, just in the first few months of the administration, more than $300 million in the cryptocurrency operation. Pretty bad. As we at Public Citizen were preparing for the Trump administration too, we were looking at, well, how are they going to roll back important rules that have been adopted by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the most important consumer protection agency in the federal government? What we weren't prepared for was their effort to just shut down the agency altogether, which in fact they've done, and I'll talk more about. We knew from the prior administration that we couldn't realistically expect them to enforce the law against corporations, for example. But we've seen a drop off already in the first 4 months of this administration with no parallel. We've tracked more than 100 investigations and enforcement actions ongoing against major corporations, already dropped in the first third of a year by this administration. We saw a lot of vindictiveness and mean tweets in the first administration, but we didn't see anything like the use of the criminal enforcement powers of the Justice Department to go after perceived enemies of Donald Trump himself personally. They were as cruel as they could be against immigrants in the first administration, but they didn't dare to employ something as preposterous as the Alien Enemies Act to try to sweep people up and ship them to foreign countries. The list goes on and on. I'm telling you what you know. I just wanted to give you a few pieces of illustration to validate what you feel. I know some of you are going to be steeped in this stuff and know that in detail. The good news is, against their illegal actions, lawsuits and litigation make a difference. And what we've been doing at Public Citizen, what our colleagues have been doing at State Democracy Defenders, and our colleagues at Democracy Forward, who you heard from last time, have been doing in the courts, is making a difference, along with other allied organizations, the ACLU, CREW, Protect Democracy, the State Attorneys General, many others. Before I jump into our cases, which I want to talk about, let me just say, for those of you who wonder, are we coordinated, or is all this stuff just kind of random? The answer is we're super coordinated. I'm on a call every morning with both those organizations. Among our litigators, the conversation is free-flowing and constant between all the organizations. And although it may not always appear this way externally, there's extremely high levels of coordination, that's particularly among all the litigating groups, but also really among the broad sort of progressive infrastructure trying to resist Trump's authoritarianism. As we look, we're very proud of the work that we've been doing, We Public Citizen, and I want to describe kind of 3 specific areas of litigation. Doesn't cover it all, but it gets big chunks of it. One area has been the effort by the administration to suppress information. A second area has been the effort to gather data illegally and manipulate it through Doge. And a third area has been the effort to shut down agencies illegally. So starting in the first area of trying to control and suppress information, as the administration has had this obsession with an imaginary and manufactured gender ideology and a mischaracterization of what DEI is, they're trying to strip information from that is available to the public. Even preposterously in the health agencies, taking down information that consumers might need, clinicians might need, researchers might need, because it supposedly exhibits gender ideology. So we sued at the Centers for Disease Control to prevent them from taking down information that they stripped on the ground of gender ideology, this made-up term. One example of what they were taking down: heart disease by county in Florida by gender. Our lawyers were able to come up with a pretty creative theory that had to do, it was actually a pro-corporate law designed to limit what the government can do with information, but it requires the government to have a process and a policy before it changes what's available to the public. And we use that law to challenge this effort at the CDC, and we've won in that case. We're challenging a similar effort to strip information related to environmental justice. There's not just information that's truthful, but it's information that's important for actors in the field to use in their everyday, whether it's clinicians or public health administrators or local environmental agencies adopting policies. We've got that case ongoing. We've got another case ongoing against the effort of the Trump administration to take down the so-called apportionment database when they show where it shows how government money is being spent, as they're trying to illegally switch money or cancel money. They took down the database so it would let us, the public, track what's going on. We've got a lawsuit in collaboration with our friends at Crew challenging that as well. So that's one category where we've had a lot of success, this effort to take down and censor information. A second category is where they've tried to access inappropriately information and manipulate it. The first case we brought on this, which was the first in a series that a number of organizations have brought, challenged the effort of Elon Musk's Doge to access the Treasury Department's payments database. This was an instance where they were actually less concerned with the data and really wanted to get into the database for the purpose of blocking funding that they didn't like. We tried to seek a preliminary injunction in that case. We were denied, but the reason we were denied is that the administration pulled back from what it was trying to do. So we effectively forestalled what they were trying to do, which was arbitrarily cancel grants and payments that would be going out from the government. We've got a similar case in terms of data going on right now at the Internal Revenue Service, where the Department of Homeland Security is trying to access information that the IRS has on undocumented people. Undocumented people pay taxes. They're called ITIN numbers instead of Social Security numbers. They pay taxes, and it's always been understood the IRS would take this information, preserve it and protect it, but people had to pay taxes. Now the administration is trying to break that deal, access that information so it can get people's addresses and go after them, sweep them up and deport them. And we're in court right now with decisions imminent about whether we're going to be able to block the IRS from turning over this information. Multiple people who've been running the agency have resigned over this. So it's tough because the effort to deport people is so central to this administration that they're pushing really, really hard. But we're hoping the courts are going to stand up. A third area where we've been litigating very prominently has been over the illegal shutdown of government agencies. We brought the first case over the shutdown of the U.S. Agency for International Development. We're co-counsel in the case trying to deal with the attempted shutdown of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. We've just recently filed a new case over the illegal shutdown of the Civil Liberties Civil Rights Office at the Department of Homeland Security. In the USAID case, we wanted a temporary restraining order, but we failed in our effort to win a preliminary injunction. The judge in that case chose to treat our issue not as a constitutional question, separation of powers question over can the administration close an agency that's created by Congress? The answer is no. Instead, choosing to treat it as an employment case. People at the agency were losing their jobs. And in that case, the judge said, well, they should go deal with it through the administrative system that the federal government has set up to deal with job loss issues. So we lost that case on the preliminary injunction. I'm pretty optimistic we're going to win it at the end of the day because the constitutional issue is pretty clear. Unfortunately, the administration has moved quickly to really destroy AID. And when we win that case, as I think we will, it's not going to be a great win because the agency will have been destroyed. And what it means to reconstitute a destroyed agency, we're going to have to work it out, but it's not going to be the same thing as what we had in the first place. At the CFPB, we've been more successful at blocking them from doing what they were trying to do, which in that case involved firing every worker, closing the office of the agency, turning it over to other purposes, and literally destroying every single record the agency had ever created. We were able to rush to court, get a TRO to block that, and then win a very strong preliminary injunction to stop them. Nonetheless, even with a preliminary injunction in place, they tried to fire 15 out of 1,700 employees. We got another order to stop that. So they're very aggressive, but we've been able to hold them off in that case. We had a companion case to AID dealing with the grants to contractors of AID or humanitarian parts of the State Department. And in that case, you may remember the government said, we're not paying the grants, even though we've got grant agreements in place. We won an order from the judge in that case to say, hey, you got to pay. And the government didn't do it. We went back and said, hey, they're not doing it. And the judge issued another order and said, hey, you got to do it. And they didn't do it. And we went back and said, hey, they should be held in contempt. And the judge declined. But he did issue an order saying, I'm giving you 36 hours to actually do it. And he eliminated whatever loopholes they were reading into his previous orders. They took that seriously. That case went up to the Supreme Court, where we won on a 5-4 basis, that actually government had to follow the order from the judge. And those contractors have been and are being paid for the work they already did. Unfortunately, the administration then said, okay, that's fine, but we're also canceling 83% of the grant agreements we had in place. So now we've amended that complaint, that argument, to say that cancellation of those agreements was illegal. That case is going on a slower trajectory. We're pretty positive about how that's going to turn out. But again, massive damage being done along the way. So without going into too much more detail, I think sort of takeaways from this are we and our colleagues are winning a lot of these cases, but not all of them. When we do win, there are big problems with enforcement and the government trying to circumvent the orders of the courts. We're having some success with holding to account, but it takes a lot of time and a lot of damage is done in the meantime. But we are losing some cases. Judges don't like to rule against the government. And of course, a lot of these judges have been appointed by Donald Trump in the first place. It does turn out which judge you get makes a big difference. So all this litigation, hugely impactful and affecting what the government's doing, blocking a lot of the wrongdoing, stopping some of their autocratic moves and some of the worst aspects of what they're trying to do. But not always winning, not always having the impact we hope, and not able to deal with every problem we face. So as important as this litigation is, and we believe it to the depths of our bones, it's equally important that we're doing other things, and particularly mobilizing people on the streets. Because at the end of the day, the ultimate bulwark against autocracy is not the courts, it's the people. And the people demonstrating, literally demonstrating their opposition. So we did a ton of work around the April 6th hands-off mobilization, which we're very proud about. We were very involved in the May 1st, the May Day mobilization across the country, which had hundreds of thousands of people turning out, led by local labor unions and immigrant groups. And we're now scaling up for 2 more really big actions on June 14th, which is going to be called under the banner of No Kings. And then also on July 17th, on Lewis, a Good Trouble Day of Action, led by a collaboration of Black-led organizations, but we're going to be very centrally involved in providing support and organizing capacity for that effort. Altogether, I think as bad as things have been, and they are as bad as you think, the things we've been doing are making a difference. Not just that we're winning so many of these cases in court as we are, but we've defeated the idea of inevitability that Trump intentionally was trying to impose on us. And that's why it's so important for people to get together. The inevitability idea tells the public, hey, things are hopeless. You should be scared. Stay home. Be isolated. Don't connect with other people. Every time we win, every time we have a major mobilization, it overcomes that idea by getting us connected, demonstrating our power, and instilling hope. So there's no doubt that this administration is going to impose massive harm on this country and the world. There's no way around that. They already have. But I do think the efforts that we're collectively making are making a massive difference in mitigating that harm, as well as, although this is a topic for another day, preparing for the period after Trump, not just to undo all the damage he's done, but to drive us forward to the kind of transformative change that so many of us are committed to and that our country and world desperately needs. So thanks very much. Super excited to be with you and appreciate all you're doing, and happy to have ongoing conversation for the rest of our time.